Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to an emergency edition of the Falcoholic Live. I am Kevin Knight, your host, joined by the top correspondents we could bring on at a moment's notice. You know him as Dave Choate, aka the Falcoholic. Dave, how are we doing tonight?
Oh, I'm still like processing this. My brain is like running Windows 95 today. I can't quite get through this. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fair.
something to talk
Yeah,
about.
big fair. That's why we got three of us. So like, if we can each just get a few words out, I think we'll be able to get through this somehow.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, of course. Yeah. Also joining us, we have Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm just hoping that Calvin Ridley bet the under on those Falcons games.
Well, we have comments, but those are best left for the Falcoholic, group chat. I don't know if I should say them on air, but yeah, I mean, some of the betting jokes, to be fair, are very good. They're very on point. So, if we weren't laughing, we'd be crying. So, let's get to it. Obviously, as you can tell from our Chiron here at the top, Calvin Ridley has been suspended for the entirety of the 2022 season after allegedly gambling on NFL games, including the Falcons, maybe entirely the Falcons. I guess we don't know. It's been a while since we've had something like this happen in the NFL. It's obviously a very serious offense in the NFL's eyes. It's also a little bit weird considering how sports gambling is sort of just a normal thing now. It's all over the place, and you see ads for DraftKings and everything. I mean, all over our site, certainly, but also before and after NFL games, everything. So it's sort of an awkward place. But we're going to get into all of it, including the salary cap implications, which we know, at least for this year, what will happen there. But yeah, just instant reactions first. Dave, I'll let you get the first crack here. I know you were at work when it happened. I was in the middle of a spicy mock draft that I had to shelve, unfortunately, until Wednesday. So you guys just going to have to wait on that. But basically, we hadn't heard anything about Ridley for a while. It was quiet. Then we heard some trade rumors this morning. I was like, okay, maybe it's heating up. It heated up. So, how did you sort of react to the news when you heard it?
Well, it's like dropping a bomb on your brain, right? Because there's no way in hell you can prepare yourself for Calvin Ridley news. I would have been prepared for, announces he's returning to the team. The Falcons are initiating trade talks. They have some promising suitors. Calvin Ridley spotted on another boat. Any number of things that would have been kind of in line with everything we've come to expect. And then like Calvin Ridley suspended for the year. Like, I am still kind of reeling from that. So my initial reaction was just shock, obviously. And I'm still kind of shocked. I nothing about it seems totally real or legit yet. Just because I keep waiting for somebody to say like, it's a joke, because Ridley's out here tweeting about how he only bet $1,500 and, he's out for the whole year. It's just crazy. And it's so startling because like the Falcons may well have moved Calvin Ridley anyways. They may well have traded him, but then now he's not going to play for them at all next year. He's not going to be on the books, but technically he's under contract again in 2023 if he's reinstated. And it's like, it just feels like this is a slow motion thing that will never actually end, So, and it's crazy because now the Falcons have to rebuild that receiving core from scratch. And I think it's like, to me, this almost guarantees they'll bring back Russell Gage, right?
I mean, yeah, it's interesting, and we're definitely going to get into it because it's, what are the implications of this? There are some, it's not exactly a surprise that Ridley's not playing for the Falcons in 2022, because I think we were all sort of prepared for the trade to happen based on, stuff that we had heard and the other national reporting, including reporting that came out like an hour or two before the suspension was handed down. Literally no one knew except the Falcons and the NFL. The Patriots didn't know. The Browns didn't know. National people didn't know. No, certainly no one I'd talked to mentioned anything about it. So this was a total blindside for everyone. But before we move on, Adnan, your reaction to this news when it came down this afternoon?
Oh, I mean, that was a shocker. Like, I had literally just written up and had an article
Yeah,
published on the
yeah.
Falcoholic about the Patriots and Browns being, possible suitors in trade rumors. And then literally 2 minutes later, it's, oh yeah, Calvin Ridley's out for the season.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, you just don't expect it because something like this doesn't happen because, most players aren't stupid enough to do something like this. Um, it's just baffling to me, the
yeah.
fact that, and for the record, I thought that the Falcons were gonna move him anyway. Like, I thought that his days in Atlanta were done before this, and now I really think that he's never gonna play for the Falcons again, if he ever even plays in the NFL again. That's a question for another show and another time, however. I'm just looking at this from a Falcons perspective, and the first thing that came to my mind was, damn it, like we probably just lost out on a first or second round pick because that's what he was going to go for. And
Yeah.
sure, the money comes off the books, but it would have come off the books anyway. He was a
Yes.
very affordable $11 million before this. This was his fifth-year option. So I'm not really jumping for joy at the fact that, oh, now we're under the cap threshold when we would have gotten under it anyway. So that my thing is, I was mostly, and I mostly am sad because the team lost out on a potential late first round pick, early second round pick this year, and possibly another day two pick. Those would have been some really nice picks to have, but also just I don't. I just want to know. So I don't condone gambling. I don't do it personally. I don't even write about it when it comes to our DraftKings odds or any betting articles. It's something I completely stay away from, just for my personal beliefs and my personal faith. Um, but I'm very curious. How did he make it this easy to get caught?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
like,
mean,
he used an NFL partner. Well, he used FanDuel, right? Who partners with the NFL. He, I think it was reported that he like used his own personal cell phone to make these bets. Like, if you're gonna do it, at least make it harder to get caught.
right. I mean, he didn't make any effort to avoid getting caught, which leads me to believe that it was just a really dumb mistake. Like that he didn't realize he wasn't supposed to or something, which is crazy to
No,
think
I
about.
can't
But
believe that. There's no way that they don't put these NFL players through some seminars or before like the season, going into their careers, even before going into any season. I'm sure of it that they tell them, that they remind them that they're not allowed to gamble on
yes.
any games.
No, I agree. There's not really any excuse for him. I know we had a question from Ray Moon with the $5. Thank you, Ray. He says there was no evidence of insider trading, conspiracies. No one else in the team knew. Do you guys think that a year suspension for this is harsh or no? I mean, this is a good question. I mean, I think it probably is harsh, but it also is sort of inevitable for the offense because the NFL can't tolerate it, ever. Like if they were to go easy on him, it just encourages it for other players for this to be a problem elsewise. So it's sort of like he's the guy that's going to have to fall on the sword because he's just the first one in this new sort of era to get caught, and he's the one that's going to have to bear the brunt of that, in my opinion. But I am curious to know, Dave, what you think about the penalty and if you think it's fair or too harsh, too lenient. What do you think?
I think it's too harsh in comparison to what the NFL hands out for other offenses, right? Like
Yes,
you've
definitely.
probably seen some of the tweets circulating, like when you're talking about, you know, domestic violence, when you're talking about violence of any kind, the NFL has never really been able to take that seriously enough in the way they punish players, in my mind, anyways. And so when you have him suspended for a year for, if it's true that he bet $1,500 on this, on the Falcons winning, which was a judgment issue in and of itself, even though they,
Yes.
they did win, if that
Lost,
was the
lost
Jaguars game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you look at it that way, then yes, it's too harsh. But at the same time, like, this is the NFL absolutely setting an example, making an example of Calvin Ridley, and making it clear that, just because they're expanding their gambling partnerships and stuff, this is not something they're going to tolerate. And it is kind of a shot across the bow for other players, because we know, if Calvin Ridley was doing it, he's probably not the only player in the NFL who's tried something like that. Others just haven't gotten caught. So, him being a high profile example for the league is something that you'd expect. So, to me, it is too harsh when you look at the way the NFL punishes other offenses, for sure. But to your point, Kevin, like, they kind of, for the integrity of the game reasons that they'll cite, they had to do it. They were not going to do anything less.
Yeah, and it's possible. I think it's possible that if he hadn't bet on the Falcons, he could have had it appealed down maybe to 8 games, 10 games, something like that. But betting on your own team is like doubly bad. You just can't. Like, they can't allow that. And, it's technically not even a guarantee that he's allowed to be reinstated. I mean, I guess I would be surprised if they banned him permanently for this, but, he would have to be reinstated again next year. Adnan, what do you think about the severity of the penalty? Do you think it's fair, or do you think it's too much?
No, I'm definitely with Dave here that in comparison, this isn't worse than, players who domestically abuse, their wives or their girlfriends. And there have been many worse things that NFL players have done that have resulted in much lesser suspensions. So it would be nice for that to kind of be balanced out a little bit, but I completely get where the NFL is coming from, because like you guys said, if this was just, a couple of games of a suspension, then, how many players would be like, all right, like, there's precedent set. I'll take a couple of missed game checks to risk this. Like, they sort of had to throw the book at him for this, because I mean, it would be a really, really bad look, and it would really mess with the integrity of the sport if this became a widespread issue. And for all we know, maybe it even is, but a lot of players aren't as dumb as Ridley to get caught the way that he did. But that's neither here nor there. A year seems rough, but I get it, and it could be a lot worse. Like, the MLB banned Pete Rose for life for him doing something similar.
Yeah.
Granted, he was playing in those games, but he was better.
Yeah, it's a little more serious. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it probably would have been a lot worse for him if he had been active and not on NFI at the time too. So
Yeah, and if that was the case, then we may be talking about a lifelong suspension.
yeah. But at this point, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what both of you said. In comparison to these other far more heinous actions and crimes, it's way too much. But the NFL was still going to do it because of the integrity of the game stuff. And I think really what we're advocating for isn't for this suspension to come down. It's for the suspensions for those other things to reach the severity of something like this. Like, domestic violence is just as severe as sports gambling, if not drastically more. So it needs to be suspended at a similar or even more aggressive level, instead of being sort of cast by the wayside and try to have fans forget about it after a few games. But that, like you guys said, is sort of a topic for another show. Let's move on to sort of the implications for the Falcons this year. As Adnan said, the suspension actually does have the effect of nullifying kind of Ridley's contract on the 2022 salary cap, which means $11.1 million that was fully guaranteed is now off the books this year. But because this was the final year of Ridley's contract, the suspension actually is going to cause it to toll, which means that it will repeat next year instead. So now Ridley is on the books in 2023 for the same $11.1 million salary. I have not been able to find out if the suspension would nullify the guarantees in that fifth-year option. I sort of believe that it would not, because fifth-year options are pretty ironclad with their guarantees, but it's possible it could nullify the guarantees. But Don't know entirely, so we probably won't figure that out for a while. But in terms of everything else, like Adon said, Falcons obviously aren't getting a pick for him this year, which is sad. They do still get the cap relief, which they desperately needed, so at least they have that. But we'll see what happens there. But Adnan, I'll let you get the first crack at this. I know you mentioned the cap savings. The Falcons are under the cap now for the first time this offseason. They have about $4 million in space. How do you think the Falcons go about replacing Ridley? Because they're probably going to have to do it anyway, but do you think this changes anything?
One thing that is slightly encouraging in all of this is that the team knew about this well before we did. Like, this isn't just a major bombshell being dropped on the team, and Fontenot and Arthur Smith had no idea. It was reported that they were told that the NFL was investigating this, and the Falcons fully complied within that investigation. So they knew this at the beginning of the offseason. So that's promising to me in that they, at this point, likely have a plan. They had to have known and taken into consideration the fact that Ridley could be completely suspended for the entirety of this season. So I'm pretty sure that they've been keeping an eye out on the free agent wide receiver class, that they've maybe kept a closer eye on the potential wide receivers in this draft class. I do think, if anything, I think that maybe this could, and I'm thinking outside the box, this could possibly encourage a trade down from pick number 8, because maybe Fontenot went into this season expecting to trade Ridley and getting that extra day 2 pick or extra first round pick. That's completely off the table at this point. So maybe he is more willing and open to trade down from 8 to maybe 14, 15, all the way down to 20 to get that extra pick, and then to, bolster the team in that way. I'm just spitballing here a little bit, but I do think that the team has to bring in an impact wide receiver, whether that's through the draft or through free agency. It'll be more expensive in free agency, but I would think that a wide receiver would possibly and probably get taken within the first 2 rounds for the Falcons. They have 3 picks in the first 2 rounds, and they could have more if they trade down from pick number 8.
Yeah, no, I had a similar thought, honestly, that this probably makes it more likely for them to trade down. Obviously they've known about this probably since February, so it doesn't really adjust what the team was going to do. It more adjusts our perception of what the team is going to do, because obviously we don't have all the information they do. But yeah, I would agree with that. Dave, what do you think about the implications of the trade, both from a salary cap, draft, free agency perspective?
Yeah, from a salary cap perspective, you're getting the same relief you would get from trading Ridley, which, seemed to at least be on the table, just without the draft picks, which is unfortunate, but the relief is there. And so, if the Falcons were proceeding with the idea that they were going to trade Ridley, and they've known about this for over a month now, or close to a month, then they've sort of figured out how the pieces fit together here. So, this probably doesn't slow them down in terms of what they were planning to do to free up cap space, but it's never been particularly clear that they're going to go for broke this year. I think without the possibility of Ridley being here, without the draft capital you're going to get from Ridley, that's another blow to this team really being like a top flight contender this year, which very few of us expected, I think. But
Right.
it's still, you have to acknowledge it. But I mean, from a draft perspective, you could definitely see them trading down, I think, if they're just looking to pick up additional capital. And I think for me, what this does is it makes it much more likely that the Falcons make some, I don't want to say aggressive, because they're still not going to be big spenders, but more aggressive moves in free agency, or maybe even a trade to pick up a receiver, because even if you re-sign Russell Gage and Lamade Zaccheaus, which I think are both strong possibilities at this point, you still don't really have much of a receiver core unless you're really counting on Frank Darby to take a big step forward. And if you don't do those things, you're in crisis mode, right? You have to come up with wide receivers, and you have to add pass catching tight ends to this roster. So in my mind, what this does is it doesn't force them to hit like a panic button, because I think they, again, were planning to maybe trade Ridley, so they knew some of this was going to happen, but they no longer have the capital that they would have gotten in the draft to maybe pick up that extra receiver on the second day that they might have really liked. And so you've got to work around that. And I think ultimately they're really going to be scouring free agency to pick up that additional receiver or two. And, you know, in my mind, maybe it even increases the chance that they go back and look at that wide receiver they were talking to from the CFL, whose name is escaping me. But
yeah,
it sounded like they were in kind of contract limbo with him. But at this point, you just start adding bodies. So there's a lot of implications to this. But I think at the end of the day, like, I'm going to be watching that receiver position really, really closely, because it's going to tell you a lot about what they think about who they have and who they could re-sign and what they need to do.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, it was funny because like I said, I was working on my mock draft when the news broke, and like I was, spoiler alert, taking another receiver for the Falcons in the second round, which I've done in almost every mock draft, I feel like, just because the value's awesome there. There's always somebody at 58. I mean, generally, I'm going to start considering guys like Christian Watson at 43 just because I think Christian Watson's awesome. But usually I try to wait till 58 because there's like 15 wide receivers in that late first, early second sort of grade range, or at least I think there will be that many for me this year when it's all said and done, which is absurd, first of all. But it really means like you can get a really good wide receiver in the second round. So it's like a lot of people were asking me, like I did a radio hit with Colby Daniels, who's a cool guy, right before I came on here, and he was asking me like, oh, well, does this mean the Falcons are taking a receiver at 8? I was like, I don't think it's more likely that they do now than before, because I think they were always planning to take a receiver, just maybe not at 8. Now, if they trade down, all bets are off. I just have a hard time seeing a receiver at 8 as like the best player, just because there's so many damn good players in this class that I just don't have a receiver in my top 8 players. So there's a bunch of them in the top 10. There's like 3, but it's just, we know that Fontenot's super serious about BPA, and I think especially so with a top 10 pick. So wide receiver is going to happen. And like Dave said, it's probably going to be somebody in free agency and somebody in the draft. But I know we had people in the chat saying, like, what does this do in terms of the Falcons' plans? Does this change anything for whether they were trying to go more towards competing this year or not? And we'll get to that in just a second. That is a good thing to mention. I did have a $5 from Corey Carter come in. Corey, thank you so much, man. He says, Alex Karras and Paul Hornung were suspended for a season for gambling, so that there was some precedent for that punishment. Also notable when Ridley placed some of the bets, one of them was the morning of the Panthers game. So, I mean, yes, like the timing and the fact that he bet on the Falcons, both things working against him in a big way, obviously. So
I did not know that part. He bet the morning of the Panthers game?
That's what Corey is saying. Obviously, haven't independently verified that, but Corey...
That's a really bad look.
Yeah, I know he bet like right before the Jaguars game was one of them, like the day before or something. So,
but the Jaguars game, he was already on the not with the team list.
Yeah,
like the Panthers game, like everyone thought that he was going to play the Panthers game, and then an hour before it was announced that he was inactive, that he was, or during inactives that he wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that one or if it was the later.
I think it was the second one.
Yeah, it was the later one. I think. Yeah. Yeah, because that would be really serious. Yeah.
Panthers game.
Yeah.
The judgment call that here is that, like, on one hand, like I've seen a couple people say, like, it's kind of funny that he bet on the Falcons, like.
Yes.
I don't know,
to win too, from what I was hearing.
To win, like, and to me, like that's. I don't know. I like that. I know that's a weird thing to say about this situation.
Low key, yeah.
I kind of like it. But it also, like, I don't know why he would do that. Yeah, it boggles the mind. Like, it's going to be like weeks before this all clicks into place. It's like the Julio trade all over again, but even wilder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're not getting any picks for this one.
Yeah, thank God we have the Julio pick. That's all I can say. So
no. Part of me wishes it was against the Falcons. Do you know how much funnier this would be if he had bet against the Falcons?
If he had bet against the Falcons. Oh, my God.
Well, that's the thing. It's like he's not on the field, right? And, like, he knows how limited this team is.
And he's still betting for the team. Yeah.
And, like,
he's like, oh, they got this.
He won both of those games.
Yeah.
So
that's actually the most disturbing part of all of this.
Said he chose to bet on the Falcons willingly. Like his bets that he was taking to risk his NFL career were on the Falcons. It's sort of sweet in a way,
Oh my
like
God.
Dave
Yeah,
said.
when you put it that way, this man was risking his entire career in $11 million to bet on the Falcons.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough, man. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's going to affect the Falcons' strategy. But I don't know that it's going to affect it in a major way. I mean, I do think that this maybe pushes them a little bit more towards the long-term rebuild, just because I think it would have been easier to compete this year if you had an extra first rounder, obviously, from the Ridley trade. You could probably gear those picks towards immediate impact guys and spend in free agency and all this stuff. Now, without the pick from that Ridley trade, it does make that path more difficult. I still think they're going to do their whole straddle the line thing with, are we going to compete this year? Maybe, but we're going to try a little bit, and we're also going to build for the future. That whatever that means, they're doing that. But I do think there's a slight chance now that we see other moves cascade from this. Like, I don't know if they would be more willing to pursue trades for some of these other players that have been mentioned. I still think they should try to extend Grady, but if he isn't willing to stick around, a trade for Grady might be on the table. Matt Ryan's been mentioned. There was a report that came out that teams were getting the impression that Ryan wasn't going to be dealt, but then again, maybe the Falcons didn't know if this suspension was going to wipe out Ridley's trade value entirely, or if it was going to be a few games or what. So it's a tough situation. And we're going to be sorting it out for a while, I imagine, trying to figure out what exactly the implications are. But in terms of the draft, don't think it changes anything at 8. But, I think that it's sort of weird, right? Because I think we all were expecting him to leave the team via trade. So in some ways, this doesn't change our projections for is he going to be on the roster? I think we all sort of mentally and intellectually had Ridley not on the team, so it's oh well, he's not on the team now, and that doesn't hit the same way. It's just the shockingness of how it went down, what exactly happened. That's the shocking thing. But yeah, I just it's totally wild. I really don't know what else to say about it. It's just crazy. Yeah, I mean, Dave, I'll go to you. Do you think this affects the team building perspective or approach in any major way, or do you think they basically continue business as usual?
No, I think if they were gonna keep Ridley, they were expecting it to be kind of a trial year and see what happened. If they were planning to trade Ridley, they're going to be missing some key draft capital, which I think, to your point, might have accelerated the timeline a little bit. But I really think this is a team that is looking at 2023 as an arrival time for them, right? So, whether it's Matt Ryan under center, whether it's somebody else, I think that's the point at which you're going to have enough cap space and maybe draft capital, depending on what they do this year with their picks, to feel like you can really contend. I expect them to be competitive this year, and I hope they're competitive this year. I'm tired of losing. But I don't think, as shocking as this is for us, as shocking as I'm sure it was whenever they found out about it, to me, it doesn't change the timeline that much for them. I think they are not a team that was going to try to get this thing done in 1 year, and they're still not going to be. And if Terry Fontenot is a man of his word, and so far he seems to be, they're going to be patient. They have to be patient, and we're all just going to have to be patient with them. Maybe even a little bit more patient now. I think, especially at the wide receiver position, I guess we got to give these guys a little bit of a break as they figure this thing out. You can still hate on them for the pass rush, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah,
definitely, yeah. They aren't absolved of the pass rush. I don't blame the team for this. If you're getting upset at Fontenot or the staff or the Falcons organization, don't. They had nothing to do with this. It's not something they could predict. It's not something that's even remotely associated with them in any way. Now, if you want to get mad at the Falcons as a blanket thing that seems to be cursed, that's totally fine. That's understandable. But yeah, I mean, Fontenot, Smith, they didn't draft Ridley in the first place, and the option, I mean, made a ton of sense to pick up at the time. There was no reason not to. If, I mean, this probably, think about where Ridley was before he got suspended. This is a guy that probably was going to get the Falcons a first-round pick. So they did everything correct up to this point, in my opinion. They just couldn't possibly predict how it went down. So.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, mostly because we're near the end here, but they did handle it well. I think, none of us know still what was going on with Ridley. I think independent of all this, clearly he stepped away because he was struggling with something, and it wasn't because he wanted to bet on the Falcons on a lark, right? So, the Falcons handling it the way they did, and then handling the trade situation the way they did, where they didn't expose themselves to a lot of risk and not, being traded with by any team, by trying to ram a Ridley trade through sort of once they learned about this and other teams didn't know. Like, it speaks well to the organization in a way that people are going to notice, and that might have positive effects down the line. So it's it's a tough situation, and I think they've done a pretty good job with it, all things considered. It's just where they go from here.
Yeah, exactly.
How shitty is it to be Terry Fontenot right now? he accepted this job, and as soon as he accepts it, Julio Jones wants out. So it's like, okay, there goes Julio. Then, the situation with Ridley this year. And now Calvin Ridley gets suspended for the entire season when he was your best trade asset, realistically. I mean, that's I don't know, man. That's rough. Like, hindsight being 2020, if I had known that all of this was going to happen, if I were Terry Fontenot, I might have been reluctant to take the job in the first place.
Terry Fontenot is getting the Jalen Mayfield treatment here in his first. Like, all right, Terry, get in there and fix all of our ridiculous number of problems. Even though you're a rookie GM, and like, we need you to trade a franchise icon, and we need you to deal with
ridiculous number of problems that he didn't even know were there.
Yep. So, hey, look, Fontenot's handled it all with class and professionalism. They did the exact right thing with this. So far. Yeah, with this whole situation. I saw some people briefly being like, "Oh, the Falcons are dumb. They should have traded Ridley when they had the chance." Yeah, that's a good way to get blacklisted by every NFL team in the league. It's not remotely worth it for a single first-round pick for Ridley.
Now, it would be funny.
Yeah, it would be really funny.
Do you know how much funnier today would have been? That they moved Ridley a month ago.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm not even sure they could have officially traded him until March 16th, but it's like the fact that they didn't. Yeah. But it's
imagine if they had said on February, they consummated a deal on February 10th that was going to go into effect. And then the NFL's press release comes out and it's like, oh yeah, the Falcons learned about this on February 9th. Like, oh my God.
Exactly. So definitely the right move to sort of politely decline to continue trade talks on their part, because you can't repair your reputation after something like that. It's not worth it for one pick to try to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, because it's the relationships. It's the NFL, just like a lot of other businesses. It's all about building those relationships. Fontenot, as a new GM, has to be really careful with how he handles that stuff, and I think he did the right thing here. Yeah, guys, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the show. You could check out our normal weekly shows on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have a great Combine recap where we're going to do mostly draft stuff. Probably can't avoid talking about Ridley entirely on Wednesday, but we're going to try to if we can. A lot of draft talk, a lot of relative athletic testing coming out, and this year's Combine was truly incredible.
Cool. Yeah, we deciphered the Terry Fontenot system last draft that he looked up the RAS score. Intently. So now we know going into this year.
Exactly. So a little nug for those that have been following RAS over the past couple days. I had the Falcons taking 2 of the 3 players in this class that posted 10 flat 10 RAS scores. 2 of the 3 the Falcons took in the first and second round. So, we're going to see how well Terry follows RAS if he takes these 2 complete unicorn players at those picks. And I think they would be good picks, too. I didn't just do it for the RAS thing. That would be funny, though. But yeah, guys, also before we sign off, do want to remind you to check out the Patreon page if you're interested in supporting us here. Get access to some exclusive content, including podcast versions of all the shows, and Falcons Q&A sessions. We're going to have some other stuff coming up on there soon, including our Falcons Falcoholic Fantasy Leagues, which were a lot of fun this year. But yeah, before we take off, want to thank my co-host this evening. First of all, we have Adnan Iket. She is at Say Which Way on the Twitters. Not anything you're working on, other than maybe it is Calvin Ridley related, but
yeah, I wrote an article today about a potential Calvin Ridley trade article. But yeah, that's if you want to check out that, take yourself back to 3 p.m. today before the news happened. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Oh yeah. So yeah, that was, unfortunate, but that's just how the news works sometimes. At least it published before the news came down. So you got a couple of clicks.
Yeah, the most messed up part about it all is that Dave knew about this days ago, and he still let me go forward with this and write that article up.
How many old guy jokes are you gonna make, huh? It's funny now.
Yep. Just, you got to deliver them now while Dave's here. We only get him on the show every once in a while. So Adnan's been saving up pot shots for you. So.
Every once in every 4 blue moons, we get a Dave Choate sighting.
Yep. Speaking of blue moon, we should go get some, Dave and I are going to go have some of those after the show. But one of the least bad, commercially available beers at like every bar, Blue Moon.
Also, I just wanted to share one of the funniest tweets I saw today. Someone said that Calvin Ridley's FanDuel account name was Calvin Ridley from the Falcons.
Real Calvin Ridley, Man, if not for the jokes, we'd be just sobbing out here. Also with us tonight, we have Dave Choate at the Falcoholic. Dave, I know there's all kinds of stuff coming down on the site this week, but anything in particular you'd like to plug?
We got a great and somehow it doesn't mention Calvin Ridley, which is great. But we have a great piece from Alan Stirk tomorrow morning on like affordable potential free agent signings. We got your mock coming, which I'm excited about, Kevin. And tomorrow afternoon, I wrote something talking a little bit about and this will be changed a little bit, I guess, by the Ridley situation, but sort of what we know about this Falcons front office heading into free agency, how they like to budget hunt and so forth, and what that might mean for this year. So beyond that, I think we probably won't plan too far out because who knows what else is going to happen.
Yep. No more advanced planning articles for me this week. Yeah. Yep. Got to shelve those. Got to let things die down in case half the roster ends up disappearing on a island voyage or something like that. So
in which case I'm going to have Adnan write an article about how all the Falcons are in Flowery Branch and nothing is wrong.
Yes, everything is fine. We're all fine here. How are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, guys. Oh, did you have something, Adnan?
No, I just said I was disgusted.
Disgusted, absolutely disgusted. Yeah, guys. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Like Dave said, my next mock draft, which I'm not going to change. It's staying the same. Deal with it. No, it works just as well with Calvin Ridley gone. I will change that paragraph to reflect the Ridley suspension, but that will be coming on Wednesday now. Tuesday, I will have a quick piece explaining the cap implications of the Ridley trade that we discussed on the show tonight, but just in case you want to see it written down, that will be coming out on Tuesday at the coveted noon spot. So, just look out for that, folks. But yeah, any final thoughts before we wrap it up, guys? Everybody said their piece.
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
Don't bet on your own sports leagues, guys.
Yeah, do not do that. Don't bet on the Falcons in general. If you're actually a Falcons fan, like, I don't bet usually, but like, if I was going to bet, I certainly wouldn't bet on the Falcons because you're emotionally compromised and you don't do anything well when you're emotionally compromised in terms of financials. So, that would be my advice. Don't bet on the Falcons. Just don't. So they also just can't be trusted in general. So there's multiple reasons for this.
It's
very sound. But guys,
also, I do just want to say Matt Ryan's been catching way too many strays on Twitter.
Yeah. No, leave that man alone.
Those tweets have been hilarious, and that's what makes it even worse. It's like the tweets about Calvin Ridley betting the under on Matt Ryan's yardage, on Calvin Ridley calling Matt Ryan to tell him to suck in a few of those games and him agreeing to it. Like, come on.
I mean, it's funny, but like, back off. Matt Ryan doesn't deserve this. Okay, Matt Ryan is a gentleman.
Matt Ryan is just like at home, just like chilling.
He was just sitting there with the ice cubes, just relaxing this afternoon. It's the off season, maybe on a beach somewhere, Barbados or something, Fiji, and just he just checks his Twitter and is just catching all these strays from this Ridley news.
He's been trending almost every day either way, and now he's super trending today.
Well, yeah, that's why Aaron Rodgers had to start talking about he was maybe going to leave the Packers during the Combine because Matt Ryan was the one getting all the attention on Twitter. So, Aaron Rodgers was like, wow, I got to put my name back out there. Matt Ryan's getting too much. So, yeah, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. All like almost 300 of you. I don't think we quite cracked 300, but it was really close. So I appreciate that, guys. Obviously not a fun or happy topic, but one that we needed to talk about, one that we needed to cover. Once about the 10th person messaged me and said, Kevin, when is the show happening? I was like, all right, I guess I have to do this. So, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everyone that donated. We will see you guys in just a few days now on Wednesday's show for draft coverage and, maybe just a little bit of Ridley coverage. 90% draft, I promise. Okay. So have a great night, guys, for myself, for Dave, and for Adnan. Have a good rest of your night. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.